there must be a feeling of going back to the Ferguson comparison. Am I going to David Moyes myself here? Not just for Xabi Alonso, but for whoever takes it.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Ramble React. Jürgen Klopp has announced he's leaving Liverpool at the end of the season. I'm Marcus Speller.
I'm Luke Moore.
I'm Jim Campbell.
And I'm Andy Rattle.
Well, hello, everybody. My goodness. Seismic news in English football. Jurgen Klopp has announced that he will step down as Liverpool manager at the end of the season. We finished Ramble recording, preview show Ramble recording. The news broke, but we were still here.
Yeah.
So we're giving you, we haven't moved from our seats in the studio. This is such big news.
So none of us are prepared.
Normally we're halfway across London, each of us going home.
You're normally in a boozer.
Well, you know, why change the habit of a lifestyle? But yes, Jurgen Klopp, he did his piece to camera, solemnly so, because obviously with a heavy heart he would have said all that, because he's had an incredible time and has an incredible relationship with those connected to Liverpool Football Club and all the fans, of course. But I mean, what are your initial thoughts, chaps, on this? It's, you know, obviously all good things come to an end. But...
In many ways, amazed that he's lasted this long, because Klopp is one of the serial monogamists of European football. Yeah. If you think 7 years at Mainz, after being there for so long as a player, 7 years at Dortmund, by the time he leaves Liverpool in the summer, he'll have been there nearly 9. Yeah. I mean, to be at a Premier League club for that long doesn't just tell you that it's been incredibly successful, it tells you about his stamina. And when he said in his chat that I just think I'm running out of energy, he's the most energetic of managers anyway. Yeah. So that he's managed to do it for that long, I think is remarkable. And then if you think of that 8.5 years, that being 8.5 years in the Premier League, and that being 8.5 years in the Premier League at Jurgen Klopp kind of tempo, the fact is, for most of that, he's been competing with one of the best club sides of all time in Manchester City. So, you know, when Mourinho and Guardiola came together in Manchester and we thought, oh, well, fireworks are really going to fly. But that never happened.
Sparklers at most.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. The intensity of it was so much at Barcelona and Real Madrid that neither of them, not even Mourinho, wanted it like that. But in a sort of different sort of way, City versus Liverpool, when it's been Klopp, Guardiola, has kind of been like that. Yeah. Not in that they've been baiting each other in the press room all the time, but the intensity of the competition has been so much. I don't know, if I was Guardiola, I might have a look and go, oh, I quite fancy a rest as well.
Yeah. I mean, does this come as a huge... I mean, obviously, it's a surprise, as he's been there so long, but given, you know, what Andy's just said there and the longevity, Jim, are you hugely surprised?
I'm surprised by the timing of it, to be honest, because it has dropped like an absolute bombshell. And obviously, you have to announce these things at some point. And I don't think there's any sort of... should we say tactical reason that he would announce it now?
Well, possibly. You know... We talked about on the main show about his relationship with David Wagner.
Maybe he wants to hang out with him more.
No, maybe he thinks Wagner knows the info. He's told him, and he thinks, oh,
he's getting a hug off him on the touchline anyway.
No,
I mean, come on.
Maybe he's thinking he's a bit of a blabbermouth. Like that time Tony Cascarino announced Teddy Sheringham's retirement before Teddy Sheringham did goals on Sunday.
Wagner wouldn't sign the NDA. I've got to get it out there.
To be honest, I sort of am surprised because it looked as if Klopp was making a lot of moves to build a second really, really strong team. If you look at the age profile of the players coming in, if you look at essentially the quality of it, the effort that he's putting into bringing youth players through. I know that they've always done that there, and he's always been very, very big on that. But it really looked as if he was essentially planning to hang around for a second full cycle, really. And I sort of am surprised. But hearing him talk about how draining it is makes perfect sense for all the reasons that Andy's laid out, particularly having to compete with Man City. And when they, you know, the achievements they've had surely come at such a huge, huge cost in terms of the energy that you put into it. And yeah, it's a real shame for English football. Be very, very interesting to see where Liverpool go next. I imagine that there'll be some sort of succession plan, given that they're, you know, announcing it with so much time. And also, it'd be very interesting to see psychologically what it does to Liverpool for the rest of the season. Yeah. They already look, you know, like proper contenders on every front.
Yeah, it could unify them. could undermine them. I mean, I'm sure he's thought about that. I think it's worth kind of focusing a bit on exactly how impactful Jurgen Klopp has been at Liverpool. You know, this is a club with a huge history, arguably the biggest club in the country. He's managed them for more games than anyone since Bob Paisley. And if you look at kind of the Bill Shankly who kind of built modern Liverpool, then Bob Paisley inherits it from him and takes it on another level. Between late 50s and the mid 80s, Liverpool only had those two managers. They're the two kind of standout, of course. But then what Klopp's achieved at Liverpool essentially ranks him alongside the most important and successful managers in Liverpool's history. Shankly and Paisley and Dalglish and Klopp. You've probably got Benitez that fits in there because he won the Champions League with Liverpool as well. So he kind of sneaks in through the back door, and he managed them for a long time as well. But Jurgen Klopp's been absolutely seismic, not just for Liverpool, but for English football as well. And I think Andy's absolutely spot on when he says, for him to achieve what he's achieved at that club, to restore them back to where they kind of belong in a post-Ferguson's Man United environment is incredible. And his place in history at that club is assured, and his place in English football is assured as well. And to
World
do
football, you would go as far.
And to do it in an environment which has essentially been undermined entirely by real financial doping, and him still being able to compete, him still being able to not just pick up a trophy here or there, not just do a kind of I don't know, like a Gerard Houllier and pick up some kind of trophies that perhaps don't mean as much to Liverpool, despite Houllier having a good bit of success. For him to be able to win everything for them, win the Champions League, win the league for the first time in so long, go on and
win the cups
and pick up regular trophies and win the cups as well is incredible. He is a massive part of English football and a massive part of the Premier League. And I think the final thing I would want to say about him is that his charisma and his personality and his kind of box office nature as well, he would always give us something to talk about on this show, for better or worse. And he'll leave a gaping hole in English football, assuming he doesn't decide to stick around and go somewhere else, which is unthinkable, him doing that in England at the moment. I'm sure he'll find a job somewhere else if he wants one.
He's employable. It's certainly
absolutely, and I think it is also interesting to pick up on what Jim said about the demands that are placed on these guys at the very top level now are clearly huge. Guardiola has to take regular breaks. You can say the thing about Klopp, Andy, but you could also add that Guardiola to that list because he's been at Man City for a lot longer than perhaps some people expected.
Than anyone expected.
I don't know how much longer he's going to be there. Normally, he's one who has to go away for a year and get completely because he's completely burnt out. So it's an incredible achievement. It'll be getting on for 9 years, as Andy says, and no one will forget what he achieved there.
Yeah, the last handful or so of years will be defined in English football as the Klopp and Guardiola years.
Yeah,
and for Klopp to keep pace, by and large, obviously not every single season, but by and large, keep pace with Guardiola and Manchester City is huge testament to him and everybody at the club. And it's interesting that when he took over in 2015, it did take until 2019 for them to win their first trophy.
They were in a mess.
They were in a complete mess, but they were in a mess, yes. And he managed to kind of galvanise them and get them going. And that pre-Klopp Liverpool time, of course, there was trophies. I mean, Champions League, as Luke says, more than one final in the Champions League, a handful. We will define Liverpool perhaps in the same way as some people have, perhaps erroneously, but describing Barcelona as sort of pre and post Pep Guardiola. What we think of modern day Liverpool. He's brought them and made them into this kind of sort of super club, if you like. But it did take a few years to win the first trophy, and the first trophy was the Champions League, and they'd bothered, they'd reached the final prior to that. But his record in finals, as we spoke about on Wednesday, wasn't great. At Liverpool, he seems to have cracked it.
Yeah.
They absolutely love it. I mean, they've won the Premier League, which was the huge monkey off their back. Obviously, Champions League, FA Cup, you've mentioned. The FIFA Club World Cup, a.k.a. the big one. The only one they've missed out on is the Europa League, which this season, you'd say they were favourites for. And I wonder, to add to your point, Jim, about, was he going to stay for a second cycle? I think that's what we all thought. But a bit like with Ferguson at Manchester United, I think Ferguson might have retired that season when Manchester City win it on the final day in injury time, and he thinks I cannot go out on that.
Yeah.
And so stays the extra year. It's a gamble, of course it is, but that's the nature of it. Wins the league and then goes right.
No, I'm done.
I'm the one who plays the final note, by the way.
Yeah.
And I think with Klopp, interesting the timing, as you say. Why not wait for the summer? Who knows? Only he knows that. But this season, Liverpool are on for a quadruple.
Yeah.
And Europa League, they'd be favourites for. They're in the League Cup final. Still alive in the FA Cup, and they're on for the league. He has to leave on a high. He has to leave. I mean, it may not result in silverware. You would have thought that they would win at least one of those trophies, but he has to leave in a good place. Last season, it wasn't great. It was actually, it was.
He started the rebuild, unlike Ferguson.
Yeah, he started,
which I think is quite interesting.
And you're absolutely right, Andy. But he couldn't leave on a bit of a sort of a damp note, I don't think. And I think he had to leave where it was kind of like he gets them back up. They're firing on all fronts. Yeah. They're suddenly almost like a not quite vintage Klopp side, because he won't have time to do that now. But he has to leave when they're all kind of like, no, we're properly back at the race.
And he has started a rebuild, but there's still quite a lot of work to do. And I think the fact that City, other issues, disciplinary issues notwithstanding, show no real sign of dropping off, I think that can make it feel a little bit more exhausting.
Yeah.
But also, I think it's the fact, they need a new sporting director.
Yeah.
The fact that Liverpool have been so well run that has allowed him to just get on with running the team pretty much as Guardiola has done at Manchester City.
But that got disrupted at Liverpool.
Yeah, it has. But they have actually created quite a decent level of continuity. They still do their transfer business basically better than anyone else. So, apart from City, perhaps. So, if there's a feeling that they're not quite sure where they're going to go with next, maybe that's one of the reasons to step away. Because if he has to step in and maybe have more influence in the short term over transfers, if they're needing that from him, if they're needing even more from him that he's giving at the moment, even for a short term period, that might be a point to say, yeah, maybe I'm going to step off. I mean, there is an obvious next step for him already, because Julian Nagelsmann is only contracted up until the end of Euro 2024. Now, okay, but like you think of Klopp's last sabbatical lasted after Dortmund, where he said, I need a break, etc. It lasted not even 4 months, really, before he went to Liverpool. He leaves Dortmund in the May, goes to Liverpool in the October. I wonder if this is a point where you always look at Jurgen Klopp and think international management's not really for him. You don't get that day-to-day thing with the players, and you don't get the sort of feeling that he created, and that's why he's been so successful in the Premier League, and that's what saw him through that first bit of the job, where people could go, oh well, statistically after a year, he's got no more points wise than Brendan Rodgers did in his last year or whatever. That was never really what it was about. The feeling that he created between himself and the fans, Liverpool fans will tell you he got it.
Yeah, totally.
He got the club. But he did the same at Dortmund and he did the same at Mainz. So you presume that he's maybe going to have to try and find the same with another club, which is not as easy as it sounds, especially at the level of sort of clubs that will want him. I think if he's looking to maintain this relationship with football and go back into club football at some point, which he will, if he goes and takes the Germany job for a couple of years, this feels like, because I think Nagelsmann will go back into club football next season, it would feel like this is probably quite a sensible point to do it.
You're confident that he'll go back into club football. It wouldn't. Yes, having heard this news just now, you think he's only 56. A lot of years left in the tank. It also wouldn't shock me if he goes, yeah, I'm done.
Well, at that level, it's a difficult thing, though, isn't it?
But
we hear quite often about how
he's achieved everything.
Top man, absolutely, and also how sort of. It's very, very rare that you get managers that last beyond a cycle of around, say, 10 years when they're at the very, very top of their game. So,
but they're like boxers, aren't they? They stay in when they're past it.
Yeah,
generally.
Well, and Klopp seems smart enough to me to not do that. Not that there's any sort of suggestion that his powers are waning or anything, or that his methods are outdated, because clearly that's not the case. But he's a smart guy. He might have an eye on that. And after he's had a little bit of rest, I also wouldn't be that surprised, Marcus, if he didn't go back into club football at some point. I mean, maybe after a few years away, he'll get bored and want to come back or whatever. But I think it is worth revisiting him being the guy to get Liverpool to win the Premier League. That is absolutely massive. It was such a monkey on the club's back, as has been said.
Exactly.
That now feels like it was just a bit of an aberration, really, and something that really desperately needed to be taken care of. And it's also worth remembering as a wider football fan that if he hadn't done that, it would have just been years and years and years of Man City domination. It would have been like the Bundesliga.
Well, I think they're unlucky. As we start to look at Klopp's Liverpool in the rearview mirror since he's announced this, I think you can already think, and I've said this before, and I do believe it, I think they're probably unlucky not to have won more than one.
Yeah. In any normal era, they get 2 or 3.
Oh, the points
non-City
mad
era, yeah.
Yeah, I think they drove City really hard on more than one occasion. I also think the timing of it's interesting because he said that he's told the club in November and he's announcing it now. I wonder whether that means that there's a succession plan in place already.
And that would be hard to keep under wraps.
Exactly.
I mean, not impossible, but maybe
there's been talk of Pep Linders, isn't there, to kind of step in. But then the big spectre at the feast now will of course be Xabi Alonso.
Yes,
who's done so well in Germany. Maybe they've kind of got assurances that they can get him in the summer, and they want to get a transition kind of ready to go, and it's not going to be confusing. What does that mean, Andy? If you can't turn your attention to what's next for Liverpool, do you think Xabi Alonso's realistic?
I think he'd be a great fit.
Steven Gerrard's gutted it. He signed that new contract.
Is Robbie Fowler still not managing in the Saudi second tier?
That is true.
I'll just put that up.
But do you think is it too soon for Xabi Alonso, or do you think that's a possibility?
I think there is the possibility that he thinks it's too soon. I mean, I think the fact that Carlo Ancelotti ended up extending at Real Madrid is perhaps not an accident, for example, because we all assumed he was going off to Brazil at the end of the season, and now he's signed until 2026. So when I spoke to Xabi Alonso back in November, actually, he was, I'm going to move my career at the pace that I want to move it. No one's going to tell me when's the right time
Much
to do
like
anything.
He moved the ball, Andy.
Exactly. Do it at my own pace.
Plays it at his own pace. Exactly. So, they've got a huge rest of the season left and a really great opportunity to do something Leverkusen. He would fit, but I guess because Klopp has been there for such a long time, because they've been so enormously successful, there must be a feeling of going back to the Ferguson comparison. Am I going to David Moyes myself here? Not just for Xabi Alonso, but for whoever takes it.
It's weird, isn't it? That's how often these work, don't they? I mean, Liverpool have been successful with that in the now sort of quite distant past.
Shankly and Paisley, basically.
There you go. But I mean, but if indeed they do offer it to Alonso,
it would be fascinating.
He's clearly the obvious candidate.
He's a great coach.
Alonso says he wants to do it at his own pace totally, but he might feel he needs to pick up the pace.
I think when it's on the table, it's different.
Yeah, and
he has as Klopp was.
Indeed,
exactly. That kind of club.
But he has the relationship with the fans and the club, and I think that is very, very crucial when you're going off, after Klopp. Now we could sit here in a year or two's time and go, well, actually, perhaps the best thing would have done to get someone completely fresh on the scene. We don't know until it happens, of course.
But Liverpool are about continuity. Historically, Liverpool are about continuity, aren't they?
Well, and if there's a chance to do it here, but
and I also think you've got to look at the circumstances around why he's leaving. I mean, he's saying he's leaving because he's run out of energy.
Yeah.
He's taken them as far as he can. As you guys have already said, and I agree with you, there's no kind of problem with how well they're doing. There's no idea that his methods are becoming outdated. If anything, we thought it was at the start of a new exciting cycle, given how they've been this season. So I guess the Liverpool hierarchy, and for all we know, they may have made this decision already, but the Liverpool hierarchy will be, do you want more of this? Or do you want to bring someone else in who can do that and
change the style?
And that could freshen it up, but it could, as you already said, it could do a Moyes, it could be an Unai Emery. No one thinks Unai Emery's a bad manager, but the fit wasn't quite right.
Say that about Moyes as well.
I actually think Moyes is a bad manager. Right. You're the one who's flip-flopped around on that, not me.
Nonsense.
You change every other week.
I don't know why you put that on me.
I think we could probably rule David Moyes out of the Liverpool job for now.
Well, because I think he should stay at West Ham.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
For now. So it's fascinating to see what will happen. I hope it galvanises them, and I hope because I think I've got no particular affiliation with Liverpool at all, really, but I think he's been such an amazing presence in the game in this country. So I think it would be very nice. It would be fitting to pick up on stuff you've been saying, Marcus, about if they could pick up something in the final year. I think that'd be nice. I'd like it to not be I mean, if it's a League Cup, it's a League Cup, but that's not the end of the
that
season.
elusive Europa League.
Oh, well, that would be fun.
Yeah.
Or even, I mean, obviously the league title would be amazing because, of course, we can't forget. Yes, if they did get that monkey off their back, but they didn't do it in front of fans, did they?
Yeah.
So it's not a big sign off. It's not as big as pure as it could be. Maybe you could put that right come May. That would be an amazing final chapter to what has been a magnificent story.
Absolutely right. One thing that some people may not know about Jurgen Klopp is that his middle name is Norbert.
Great. And that will always be the case whether he's Liverpool manager or not.
Exactly.
So that's a little bit of comfort for Liverpool fans everywhere there.
Something we can all get behind.
Yeah, absolutely.
There we are.
Thanks for watching a clip from the Football Ramble podcast. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss a video. And if you're feeling extra generous, why don't you like this video? Why don't you like this video?